I want us to have a conversation about something that I know is really, really hard for many of us to do. It has been for me over the years, and it makes us feel awkward and we kind of break out into sweat as soon as we mention it. But we're going to have a conversation about how to ask for a raise and to make sure you get paid what you're worth. I want to take you through my paid framework to guide you to get over that fear and to make sure you get paid. Right. Let's talk about that conversation that most of you have been putting off. The one where you walk into your boss's office and ask for a raise. I know, probably even hearing that is making your palms sweat, and you're already listing off all the excuses as to why now is not the right time. Because maybe you should finish that project, or actually maybe you're not quite ready yet, or actually no, this needs to happen another time. Stop putting it off, because we're going to work out how to do this. Because the reality is there is an art form and there are things you can do to make it more comfortable to go in and ask for a raise. Now, the truth is, women are unfortunately particularly poor at asking for a raise. Not because we're not brilliant, but because of social conditioning and years and years of the way that we've been conditioned to ask for what we deserve. Because the reality is, the discomfort of asking for a raise, getting past that feeling, and actually even having the conversation is probably not going to be more than 20 minutes. And I think 20 minutes is worth it. Because if you think about the compound impact of not getting a raise or getting paid what you're worth over years, it's huge. You deserve that. And to be quite honest, every year you don't, knowing that your salary will go up based on what you have this year, you're just making it worse. So I want to help you understand what you can do today to make sure you're ready to go and ask for a raise tomorrow. Let's get into it. I've got a simple framework that I'm going to step through each stage with you to make sure that you go from being scared of doing this to having the action and the excitement to go in and get what you deserve. So let's start with the mental framework. First of all, you're not asking for a favour. You're asking to be paid for the value that you deliver. So let's think about it. You get hired in to the job you're doing at a certain salary. So the business has valued what you do at a price. You now have been doing that job for a period of time, adding more value to the business. The likelihood is, if you're doing a good job, you've actually been adding more and more value to what you do. So what you came in and was valued by the business has now since grown to be offering more value to the business. Therefore, you're not asking for a favour when you go in and ask for a pay rise. You're going into a negotiation, a business negotiation like you would in any other situation. And that's how we need to treat this. We need to get out the mindset that you're doing anyone a favour, or that it's not helpful, or that you're being difficult if you go in and ask for this. It's a transaction. You are doing something that is valued. Are you being paid that in return? Now, the most expensive mindset, the one that's going to cost you the most, is the one where you think, they're going to know how much I'm worth. They're going to pay me exactly what I'm worth. Your belief is that someone right now is sitting there with a spreadsheet and going through the numbers and saying, yes, we need to give that person more money. Now, maybe you're lucky and that happens. My experience is that it might happen to a degree, but is it really going to be exactly what you believe you're worth? Have you had the chance to have that conversation? There's nothing worse than kicking yourself after the period of time and going, I wish I'd asked for a bit more. Why did they think and value what I do at this rate? So we're going to not do that costly mistake, and we're going to take control of the situation. Now, I can hear you now. You're saying, Nishma, but I'm not quite yet ready yet. I haven't got the confidence. Confidence only comes from action, from us going out and taking the action and being more confident about it. The reality is, and we know this with the stats, that most women wait till they are meeting nearly 100% of the attributes for a role before they apply for it. Men traditionally will go for the opportunity of stretch and growth. The data shows that they're happy to match maybe 60% of an attributes for a job and go for it. It's not that different when it comes to pay rises. So we have got to find a way of understanding our value and being comfortable about what we're presenting. Because the other thing about pay rises, it's not just about what you've done, the value you've generated for the business and the role that you're doing. It's about what you're going to do. You, in the role you've been, will now have acquired more knowledge, more experience. You can do things even better and maybe more and new and different things. Maybe you've taken on some additional responsibilities. All of those need to get factored into your negotiation. Too often, we simply want to take a number that we got paid last year and add something to it. What you want to do is look at the value you were delivering, what you will continue to deliver, and what more you could deliver. That's how you evaluate your value and therefore what you should be paid. And the first time you ask for this raise, it's going to feel really difficult. Like anything in life, the first time of doing anything is going to be really awkward. So you need to get some practice in. And just remember, every time you do it, just think about the fact, well, you're either going to be getting more than you were before or you're getting the same. So you can't lose. Therefore, it's worth going for it. Now, mindset done. Let's get into it. Because as I said to you, I've got a framework that's going to help you. And I might have squeezed it into this to make sure it makes sense for you, but I've called it PAID. Because why not? That's why we're here. Let's get paid. The PAID framework is a way to help you make sure that not only do you overcome your fears, that you're successful when you go into that room to ask for money. P is about gathering proof. A is about an actionable strategy. I is about initiating the meeting, because you're going to make it happen. And D is for driving follow-up. And yeah, I've squeezed a few words to make it sound paid, because it helps us remember. But trust me, each of the things we're going to cover in there are going to be super helpful to you. I only wish it'd been around when I was trying to get a pay rise. 6 months from now, you're not going to remember half the things that you've achieved. Be honest, you've been in that situation. I know I have. You get to the end of the year and you've got to write your performance review and you've got to fill out what you've done, and you sit there and go, was I even here for the first 6 months? Now that's because we're going to forget. We're going to forget all those little moments, those massive bits of value you might have brought that then just get swept up in the mix of everything else you've done. So how do you change that? Well, starting immediately, you need to make sure you have somewhere where you're collecting your evidence. Now, you can call it what you want. You can call it your next step to damehood. This is me being a superstar. This is how I'm going to rock the world. My favourite folder. Yay me. Whatever. Pay me. Call it what you want. In this folder goes evidence. What's the kind of evidence you put in there? The email back from a client who thanks you for something you've done, who shows you how much impact they've delivered, from a boss, from a colleague, from a peer, the actual data, the numbers behind something you've done and delivered. Everything needs to go in there. I used to keep a wide selection of different emails. I used to call them love letters from clients when they were showing appreciation for what they were doing. I would keep the receipts in terms of emails that I got from colleagues who appreciated the impact of something I'd done, and then the core data. What was it moving? What were the targets we'd hit through doing it? All of that goes in there because you get to the end of the year and then you've got somewhere to go back and plan from. One of the other things you need to make sure goes into that folder are all the additional things that you start to take on. We do it naturally in jobs. If you're pushing and you're succeeding, you will naturally have the opportunity to take on more responsibility, whether you're being asked to or you just have. These are the additional areas of value that you are delivering. So whether you've been given a set of OKRs or goals or targets, you know that there's probably things that you're going to be doing over and above them. It's worth making sure that you are taking note of that. It's the kind of stuff that can get overlooked. I always used to say that some of the work that people would do around furthering the culture in the business, or some of the work around diversity and equity and inclusion, or some of the things we would have around who would organise the big cultural moments for our team, that's still work. It's still a contribution to people doing things that actually help the business drive forward. Don't overlook those moments. They require you to go over and above what you're doing in your job and should be noted in your performance review and your negotiation. You are an additive to the business culture, and that's really important and has a value to it as well. Now, the third thing is you've got to know your number. You've got to have made some decisions around actually what's going to feel good in terms of this pay review. Now, this isn't just about actually what expenses and costs you have. This is about what's the market value, what's the business value, what are your peers on, how can you make sure that the number you're asking for is reasonable, has enough stretch in it, and could go for it. Now, when you get that range, you go to the top 25%. And the reason why I say that is because you are starting a negotiation. And you need to appreciate you're probably not going to end up exactly where you start. So make sure you give yourself some room to negotiate. Places you can go and find out what your salary should be or what that role or what you do is valued at is things like Glassdoor. LinkedIn also have some insights around pay reviews. But also, look, if you know someone else, maybe a friendly competitor or an ex-colleague, go and have a coffee with them. Try and find out where and how your role and your contribution is valued in other businesses as well. It'll really help make your argument stronger. Another key fact, the research shows that women go in and ask for the number they want. They don't start with a number higher in the range, they start at the exact number and then walk away frustrated when they don't get that. That's why it's important to go with a number that gives you room and breadth to be able to negotiate. And then timing matters. Now, you do need to be thoughtful about what's going on in the business and around. So, for example, if it's coming up to a pay review and you've not gone in early enough, the reality is those numbers will have been done. So I'll give you an example. If you believe that your business reviews their pays and everyone gets their new salary in about 3 or 4 months' time, that's the moment where you should be talking to your boss. It's about as early as that they will start to set their salaries and budgets. So you don't want to miss that window to be able to have a conversation so they can build it into their budgets. You probably don't want to do it if the business is going through a period of redundancies or it has noticed significant losses. Or actually, do you know what? Your boss is really overwhelmed and having a tough time. It's not going to land well as a message. So think about your timing. Do you know a really great time? When they've just delivered some brilliant results, you've hit your targets, and actually you're delivering the value that they need. That's a great time to go in. So when you think about picking your moment, think about the other factors that impact it. So P is for prep. This is about prepping your proof. It's about gathering the evidence that's going to help you make sure you can go in and ask for the right number and be able to back it up. So proof and evidence of the impact and value you brought the business, and then also proof and evidence of what your kind of role might be valued in the marketplace. You need to make sure you're properly prepared before you go into the meeting. A, in my PAID, is approach for strategy. You need to know how you're going to strategize this. You need to know how you're going to approach this. This is about thinking very carefully about things like timing. It's about who else can advocate for you as well, and what's the right way to tackle this. Now, as well as timing, you also need to build your coalition, because the reality is, actually, you need to have people who might be able to advocate for you in the room, or put in a good word, or support when somebody's talking about your pay review, are able to support it with additional evidence or ideas around what impact you've had. So how do you go about this? Well, there's actually 3 different types of people you need in your coalition. There's somebody who I would call is your diagonal peer. So this is somebody who might be on the same level as your boss, but is a little bit further afield. Someone you may have interacted with on a project or who's felt the impact of your work. For example, in my world, I worked in marketing, but we interfaced a lot with sales teams. So I needed to make sure that the sales leaders knew what my value was if they were going to be in the room where my pay was going to be discussed and my impact was being reviewed. Another one is a mentor. If you have a mentor, or you may have a number of mentors or sponsors, make sure they're really clear on what your ambition is for asking for a raise. They need to understand, perhaps even share with them the pay range that you're going for and what you're using as evidence of your impact. Your mentor is there to help support and maybe able to put in a good word for you. And then the final one, which is often overlooked in some businesses, but I think is incredibly great practice if it's done, is what we used to call at Google was skip level meetings, i.e. the third person in your coalition is your boss's boss. I know, feels terrifying. But the reality is, if your boss's boss doesn't know who you are, you're just making the job a bit harder for yourself. Because when they talk about you in that meeting, they're not going to have any familiarity. They're not going to know what your impact is. And so it's absolutely okay that through the course of a year, for you to ask for the occasional catch-up with your boss's boss. It's great practice. They often want to know and hear from other members in the team. Don't make that your opportunity to ask for a pay rise. Just make that an opportunity to be curious and to share what you're doing. So when you get your coalition together, just remember you can't control what happens in the room, but you can definitely influence it. This is about having an approach for strategy that can help you in that room. Now, I is initiate the conversation. Again, the bit that probably fills most people with fear. What you don't want to do is do the thing where you stick a meeting in someone's diary that says, catch up. Doesn't tell them anything about what it is. You need to be assertive and clear exactly what it is that you want to speak to them about. So, how to actually ask. You don't want to ambush them. You don't want to surprise them because you want them to have an opportunity to have thought about the conversation before they come to it. So rather than popping in the diary, let's have a catch, a bit ambiguous, slightly terrifying. Are they going to resign? You're going to have all sorts of questions popping off in your boss's head. Instead, put in there, I'd like to discuss my pay review, or just put pay review 20 minutes needed. They then know you're setting the expectation for the conversation you'd like to have. Other ways that I've seen people do this is they will come in with an email that just says, I'd like to put 30 minutes in your diary to discuss my role and compensation. Depending on the relationship you have in your boss and your business, your formality or how casual you are will need to really set the tone, but be specific. Don't try and be ambiguous or hide what it is that the purpose of that meeting is. You're going to fare a lot better if they can come in prepared. Let's think about planning for exactly what's going to happen in the meeting. So the first thing is, how are you going to make sure you positively open it? You've got to imagine yourself walking in there. How are you going to greet them? What's going to be that first line that you say? I think it's always good to start with the positive. You don't want to go in and go, I want to be paid X. How about going in and saying, I'm having a really positive experience working it. I'm really enjoying it for these reasons. I'm loving the work we do here or the product or working with the teams and think I'm delivering great value. So you're starting with a positive, an appreciation for the job, for the business and what you're doing, but also an ambition to want to do more. In that first statement, you're making it very clear that you're priming the room for the fact that you want to be able to ask for a raise. You're not going to be asking to leave or threaten to leave. That's really important. You're immediately going to change the chemistry and the level and relax your boss to where you are. You're showing positivity, commitment and enthusiasm to the role. The next section is about the evidence. How do you present your evidence to support your argument? Well, this is when you want to start to get into storytelling. You don't want to bamboozle them with loads of facts and numbers. You want to tell them the story of your impact. Think about one of the biggest challenges that your boss might be really worried about or that the business is concerned about, and talk about what you may have done to help support that. Sometimes you could be several layers away from a problem and still the work you're doing is having an impact on what happens there. So think about how you present your evidence. You may want to say, over a period of time, I've taken on these additional responsibilities and I've delivered X and Y. Always think about how you will frame the things you're doing back to the business value. It's really important to the person listening, to the person you're asking for the raise, can completely understand the value you're bringing. Now, the third thing is to make sure you also present some market reality. So you've done a little bit of your work for your boss by looking out in the market to see what this kind of role and value that you're bringing to the business is valued at. Share some of that evidence without it feeling like it's being combative or threatening. It might be saying, I have seen these other roles and they are being paid that, just so they understand that there's a sense of fairness in the range that you're asking for. Then the final bit, the ask. Often the toughest bit, but you're going to be confident and you're going to practice it. Whether it's in a mirror, with a mentor, with a friend, you're going to practice asking for the money. Best way to do it is couch it in what you've done. Given these things I've done and the value I've delivered, I believe that I should be compensated in this way. You're giving the whole picture. This is what I've done. This is where it's valued. This is what I'd like to have in return. And then you say nothing. That's the hardest bit. Being quiet and letting them absorb and hear what you said and respond to it. The danger is most people will overtalk at this point. They make their ask and then they try and over-justify that ask. Don't do that. Let them sit and listen to what you've said and respond. It's in that response you will be able to start the negotiation, because in many respects you're leading them into having that conversation. If you want to get really fancy, you could use this trick called the no-facing question technique. So this is where you could go in and ask a question of, can I have a raise? Which could have a yes-no answer to it, but doesn't really give you much more of a sense of what that raise could be. Or you could go in and say, would a raise of 10% be completely out of the question? Now, what you're doing there is you're forcing someone to say yes or no to that. It's a lot easier to get someone to say no and then get them to say what they would be willing to say yes to than to ask the first question, which doesn't give you any clues or evidence to be able to build a strong negotiation. So think about what you could go in and ask for. Would X be a sensible number, or would X be achievable? And see what they say. You're forcing them into a position that they can offer a bit more about what would be considered and reasonable. It also makes sure that you know that they've said it's not impossible. The door is open, the negotiation begins. Now, there are some things that you do not say. You do not say, I need to have X because my mortgage is Y. No one cares about your personal situation and need for what you need. Don't bring that into it. As I say, you're always framing everything from a business value point of view. It's okay to say something like, I have been approached by, or I have seen that there is a role available. That's okay. But you also do need to be prepared that if they were to say, we can't match that, and therefore you need to leave, you need to be prepared to go. But you can open that as a conversation to talk about the market. It doesn't have to be as complete as you leaving. But just be careful, no empty threats, never lands well. Now D. D is for driving the follow-through. Now, the biggest mistake most people have is if they've managed to get to this situation where they've got into the office and they've asked for the money, they've said the number, they've shut up and they've started a negotiation, is when they leave the room, they don't follow up. 6 months later, they're frustrated that nothing has changed. It's on you to make sure you follow up with your boss. Hold them to account and hold them to a point where they have to come back to you. Get them to make sure they commit to a point in time and what that response will be. You can be respectfully demanding around this, because otherwise the danger is it'll just carry on, which impacts all relationships. Your career is not a meritocracy. Waiting for someone to come along and be able to reward you what you think you're going to get and know about all the successes you have is a complete fallacy. You need to advocate for yourself, make sure your impact is known, that you've communicated well, and you take control of these kind of conversations. Don't wait for things to happen to you and hope that they do. Take control. No one is coming. Go out and get it. So that conversation that's been rolling around in your head or you've been avoiding for months could happen in 20 minutes. Think about that 20 minutes. 20 minutes that could lead to £50,000 over the next 15 years. That's a deposit for a house or a nice car or an amazing holiday. But it's also something bigger than just the monetary value. It's a huge signal about your identity. You're pushing out a signal to your boss and to your colleagues and to everyone else how you value yourself, how you see your self-worth and the contribution you're making to the business. So this isn't just about the money. This is actually about how you see yourself and want to see yourself going forward. It is a signal to let others know that you're taking control of your career. So there's never going to be the perfect time, in your head at least. You can look for the right conditions, but there's not going to be the perfect time. So act now. Because what's the worst that can come? Well, they say no. It doesn't change where you are today. Or they say yes, and you're substantially better off. It's worth the risk or the gamble if you see it that way. I see it's actually an important step on your progression and your plan and taking control of your career. Now, do me a favour. If you thought this was useful and you know someone else who might find this useful, please share it with her, because we all need to get better, particularly women, at asking for the money that we deserve and should be paid. And I think it's really important that we all learn the tools and the tricks of how to do that. I wish I had. I wish this had been around for the years, but I didn't quite know how to ask for a raise. And paid keeps it really simple. Proof, having an actionable strategy, making sure you take the initiative to book the meeting in, and then making sure you drive the follow-up. You can do this and keep practicing it. Maybe practice it with some other peers. Now, if you like this and you want some other tips on how to grow your career and to manage these difficult moments in our life, follow me and check out some of the other videos.